He says the year was 1984. The place was a Toyota dealership in South Florida. The game was a Miss Pac-Man Cocktail Machine. I'm not super familiar with what a cocktail machine is, but that just sounds pretty funny. He says, I've owned a new console from every generation, Atari 2600 going forward, mostly Nintendo and Sony. Why do I still play? Probably for the same reason that I would rather play sports than watch them. I like the immersion depths and the ability to ask what if, then try out an idea and see the results. That's what I love about Legend of Zelda. If you're like, okay, I wonder what happens if I take this bomb and put it in front of this wall. Oh, it blew a hole in the wall. I didn't know this. I go in, there's a whole cave I can explore. That's super cool. I wonder if I shoot this arrow through this fire, will it catch that other thing on the other, that net on the other side on fire? And lo and behold, it does. Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time was the first game that got me to experiment with different ideas and think, if I do this, will it do this? And 9 times out of 10, it would do it. And it's just, it's super cool. I think just for even as the kid that I was growing up, like that did so much for me, just thinking like mechanically and just problem solving and doing all that. There's nothing quite like it. You can do that with movies to a degree. You can do that with books to a degree, but nothing to the degree that you can do it in video games at all.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Real quick, a cocktail machine, Logan, is not like the full-sized arcade machine, but kind of just that table that you kind of sit 2 people on either side, and you can. It's like a flat thing that you just sit at.
That's what that's called.
That's what a cocktail machine is when he's talking about the Miss Pac-Man. But
I'm going to look this up now.
But yeah, going back to, when I was saying earlier about I went to NES, Sega Genesis, and when the PlayStation came out and I got into all that, that's when it sort of clicked in me. It goes along with what you're saying here. I think part of the reason why is because those heavy narrative-driven games I started experiencing those for the first time. And going back to Blockbuster and Resident Evil 1, I remember that was probably the first like narrative-driven PlayStation 1 game I played on the PlayStation 1. Like I'd played like Tekken 2 and like Twisted Metal up to that point, but nothing like this. And I remember I brought it home, and like my dad, who was not into video games at all, he was like watching me, and I was like, look at this. I was like, look at what this game's doing here. And it was campy as all get out. It was Resident Evil 1.
Yeah.
But like when those Doberman Pinscher dogs bust through the window, and you get a jump scare like in many classic horror movies, but now it's like, oh, I've got to run. I got to run.
Yeah, you're the one that has to run.
That was like, I think maybe that's why I love the horror genre so much, because that was kind of my first, for all intents and purposes, like first really narrative-driven game that I experienced was Resident Evil, I guess. Now that I think about it, I guess I would never really thought about that. But yeah, so like that sort of agency, like we talk about, this just was fantastic, and 3D era games, like when we started getting Doom and Ocarina of Time and Resident Evil 1, it's like, man, it really started kind of it started blossoming and opening up, I think.